Serious, women who gave the creep a chance, how did it go? U/Am Williams responded. L ignored my gut feeling about him, overlooked his strange tendencies and tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. We were together for almost 2 years. The entire relationship, he added girls he didn't even know on Snapchat and would say rather inappropriate things to them. Being that you know nothing about strangers on that app, I'm now aware that one of the girls was a minor. He was 26. On my 22nd birthday he had invited my best friend to sleep in our bed with us, and the first time he met my sister he gave her the same invitation. He gave both of those invitations right in front of my face. When we were out together and he saw someone attractive he wouldn't just glance, he stared. He regularly talked shit on my family, and is just generally an awful person. I was his first real girlfriend and he was extremely self-centered and mentally abusive. That ended almost a year ago and he still goes to our regular hangouts and asks about me, when I come in, where I'm living, who I'm seeing, etc. My takeaway from that whole situation is, always trust your gut feeling about people. U/Xjexbabax responded. I agreed to go on a date with a guy. He seemed nice enough and he appeared to have his shit together. After an hour at the pub, I was getting some red flags and I said I needed to make a move and he walked me to my car. He then got in my car with Emmy and begged me to go back to his. I politely declined at first but he wasn't getting out so Elle started to get more scared. After about 20 minutes of insisting I come back to his I was terrified. So I secretly texted my mate to call me with an emergency. 5 seconds later she called and said she got stuck in a puddle and needed my help. I love this girl. So I told him I really needed to go and after getting quite angry he finally got out and slammed my car door. Unfortunately I went on another date a year later with a different guy and again he got in my car and tried to kiss me. I just leant on my horn, wound my windows down and screamed like a crazy person. Luckily he got the message and left swiftly. Guys, please don't just get in the girl's car, it's creepy and scary AF. U/Celtic Kimber responded. There was a guy, who I wasn't sure about, there had been signs. After a couple normal dates, he wanted to take my Jeep to a local off-road location that had a main rutty road with many offshoots with hill climbs and mud pits. He bugged me to drive it. I told him he could only take it down the main off-road, but while we were bouncing, straddling ruts, chugging along just fine, he suddenly gunned it up an almost vertical climb off the main road, and rolled us into a ditch on our side. The tires weren't on the ground, so no way to get it out. Then, he acted like it was no big deal. I had to walk to my uncle's house, which happened to be on a road near the off-road location. He wasn't home, but his girlfriend was, so I called a couple people and couldn't get a hold of anyone. As a last resort, I called one of my best friends from childhood, a guy friend, which we did briefly date for a while before deciding to just remain friends, the only person I could get a hold of with a vehicle that could potentially pull my Jeep out. The creepy guy had no ideas besides to leave it there on its side. He had a total fit, and made a big scene. My friend from childhood helped me pull the dents out and fix it while the creepy guy walked off into the sunset. U/KTL Wood responded. Back in high school several of my female friends and I, also female, had an off period before lunch, so we were all sitting around a table chatting. One of the female security guards came up to us and told me that there was a new exchange student from Amsterdam that thought I was cute, but he was too nervous to come over and introduce himself. I have zero interest in men, but I figured there wasn't any harm in letting the guy come sit with us and helping him feel more comfortable at our school. So he comes over, sits down with us, and chats a bit. He seemed rather shy, and he had about a dozen piercings going up each arm that he kept fiddling with, and a bunch of facial piercings. Then class lets out and people, including a bunch of my male friends, start showing up for lunch. First male friend sits down and introduces himself. New guy doesn't not respond at all, doesn't even look at friend. Weird. Maybe just shy. Second male friend comes and sits down. Same thing. Slightly unsettling now. We kept trying to include him over lunch but he would only respond to the women. Wouldn't even acknowledge the other guys at the table. I never talked to him again after that lunch period and 2 weeks later he got expelled for slamming a girl against a locker and choking her to the point she nearly passed out. U/Justice Scrolling responded. Met him when I worked as a cashier in a small downtown shop. Wasn't my type and seemed a little off, but I was young and had zero real dating experience. Agreed to grab coffee as a friend and made it clear I didn't have a romantic interest. He became convinced he was Gatsby and I was his Daisy. The Great Gatsby film had just come out that year. Started stalking me and endlessly sending letters and gifts to me at work describing how we were fated to be together. When I confronted him to stop, he started having his friends follow me at work or drop by to check in on me. Prowled outside on nights I had to close shop alone. I ended up quitting that job and things fizzled. 7 months later I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was the same dude he just got released from a short prison sentence and was letting me know he thought of me every day and was going to find me so we could finally be together. I made up a story that I was traveling abroad for college and would be gone indefinitely. Changed my number and luckily haven't heard from him again. U/Wazoo53 responded. Did one video chat with him during which he asked if he could, call me again later in the day. When I told him no I'll be busy, started getting random text messages throughout my day that said are you okay? Just let me know you're okay. The first I responded to, I said, hey, yeah, I'm fine. I just hung up with you 30 minutes ago, bud. He took that as a sign that I wanted to talk more, so he attempted another video call. When I didn't respond, he started again with the texts. Didn't even bother responding to the rest. Up to 20 unread messages later before I was able to block him while leaving him on read. You/conceited polar bear responded. Went on a first date for just drinks with a guy, and red flags were immediate. Didn't look anything like his profile, and got handsy almost as soon as we sat down. I wasn't into him at all, but we had a shared interest in horror novels, so I decided to extend the date into dinner. During dinner, he drank several old fashions while I nursed a single beer. He then told me he thought we were soulmates, and he thought we were going to fall in love. He also told me his ex-girlfriend was going to get an abortion the next day. At the end of the date, his portion of the bill was significantly more than my portion because of all his drinks, but he asked me to pay half, which I did. On top of that, he gave me shit for driving to the date even though it was only a mile from my house. I didn't want to walk in hot weather in my nice date dress and I had twisted my ankle earlier that week. But even after giving me shit for driving, he asked me to give him a lift home. Which I did. Once we were in front of his place, he refused to get out of my car unless I went inside with him for a nightcap. I said absolutely not. He begged me to just enjoy a drink on his front porch. I said no. I told him to get out of my car. He finally did. The next day, he texted me telling me that was the best date he'd ever had and he couldn't wait to see me again. I told him no thank you, and walked away with one lesson learned: I need to just say no from the beginning. You/blackbox mellow bitch responded. This guy was handsome but way too into me for knowing nothing about me. It wasn't like when we spoke I was an open book or felt a strong connection that would lead me to want to share info with him. This was not a I feel like LVE known this man forever connection. I just thought this was normal dating but had a gut feeling something was off. He talked to me like LD been his girlfriend for months. We went on 3 dates, never even had sex. After third date I had made my decision based on our short time getting to know one another and let him know I had no interest in continuing to date and that I didn't see us being compatible long term. He then locked me in his car, proceeded to ask if I wanted to move to California with him, WTF, and started crying begging me to work this out. I tried to be very nice but it got to the point I was scared and wasn't sure how this was going to go since he was virtually a stranger, so L hit his dashboard and said if he didn't let me out of the car immediately I was calling the police. Then he threatened to kill himself if I didn't spend the night with him at his house. LD never even been to this man's house. He finally let me out after like an hour or two but stayed in the parking lot of my apartment almost the entire night and called me non-stop. About a month later he texted me out of the blue a really long paragraph apologizing profusely and saying if I ever change my mind to call him. I just said thanks for the apology and wished him well. Hope he's doing okay but I wanted no part of that. You/MSAPIO psych responded. A few years ago, I went to a brewery to meet a guy on a date for the first time. The waiter began a conversation and asked me if I was expecting anyone else. I told him I was on a blind date and hadn't met the guy before. The waiter asked me if I wanted to set up a code word. Since they didn't serve milk stouts, if I ordered one from him, he would know something is up and would call me back to have me sign the receipt instead. The waiter kept checking on me frequently. Eventually, I did order a milk stout. When it came time for the bill, I asked for it to be split. My date put his drinks on my bill. When the waiter came back, he told me he had the drinks removed, it was on the house. When my date asked me what that was all about, I told him the waiter had told me there was something wrong with my card, so I needed to go to bar with him. I waited a while and then left for my car. The date was still there. He made a comment about how he was waiting for a goodbye hug. I told him, no thank you, and that my car was in the opposite direction. Moments later, he sent me horrendous text messages. And thank you, John. You may have saved my life that day. You/Millian Violet responded. Used to work in a small store and this creepy dude would try to flirt with me. I guess it was flirting, like once or twice a week. He seemed like someone who didn't have any friends and never socialized, but one day he asked for my number and it wasn't aggressive but pretty straightforward, so I was like sure I guess. Thought he was weird but he knew where I worked so I couldn't really reject him because there was no way of knowing how he would react, so I had to keep talking to him from time to time to make sure he didn't flip shit on me since I worked at night. After like a few weeks of occasional short text convos, like maybe 2 or 3 few word texts, he asked how old I was and he finally stopped talking to me because he was disgusted that I was 24 years old. He thought I was only 16. He was 28. He was a pedophile. You/starry_ski3 responded. On our first date I ordered a beer. It came to the table super frothy. I was distracted for a moment but when I looked at it again there were very clear drip marks in the foam like something had been dropped in it. I made up some excuse about not feeling well and got out of there. Oops. Can't leave. My dumbass drove and my car was valeted. I, very uncomfortably, got the car from valet and we both got in. He asked me to stop at a gas station so he could buy smokes on the way. Thank God because I knew going to his house was not a good idea. As soon as he got out at the station I peeled out and left him there. I never should have let him in my car, but I panicked. One didn't know what he was capable of. This was 15 plus years ago. I'm now happily married to the best thing that ever happened to me. Molly Emerald responded. After years of telling the saga of a series of bad dates titled Head in the Freezer Dude. One of my friends asked me what he looked like. I googled him, only to find a mugshot after he was arrested and convicted for murder. Years after our last contact, he had found a roommate on Craigslist, had sex with him, bit the end of his finger off, killed him, then tried to burn the place down by turning on the gas stove then starting the toaster with a newspaper in it, which didn't end up igniting. This was all on the same day he met the guy. And that, my friends, is how I dated a Craigslist killer. /fire_Thorn responded. He had terrible hygiene. I was 16, he was old enough to buy beer for my friends. He had a friend who had some sort of made-up gang, who threatened to kill me if I ever left him. I stayed with him longer than I should have. He would follow me to school on the city bus and then walk around leering at women and pinching his nipples. I tried to break up with him and he bought me Looney Tunes jewelry and insisted we were engaged. He finally had to go out of town for some family stuff and stayed gone for months, so I considered us broken up and I moved on. When he came back, he acted crazy. He would go to my job and follow me around and try to corner me in the bathroom. His dad was the chief of police at a university and knew I was 16. My parents also knew about the relationship. I feel like some parents should have intervened to keep me from feeling trapped in that relationship. /Karmatica responded. I'll give the rare success story, not with me but it's not as bad as the others. He was sort of creepy and weird and neckbeardy. We hung out and sort of flirted because I didn't want to be seen as shallow and didn't know how to hold boundaries, but I wasn't really interested. I eventually just sort of stopped giving him attention and giving off signals. Apparently he made a couple snide comments to people we both knew about how don't date monomuggles, monogamous people, anyway you which is a dick thing to say. A few years later I saw him at a con and he waved me down and I was nervous but he was like hey, wanted to apologize, I was a real prick to your friends, LVE done a lot of work on myself and realized that women not liking me isn't a them problem, it's a me problem. I forgave him and we hung out a couple times after that at cons hence. Good guy. Just had been going through a cringy phase. /Icotech responded. We worked together. I wasn't super into him but decided to give him a chance because it's not like I was dating anyone else. In fact, I had a bit of a crush on another coworker that was in a somewhat supervisory role over me, so I thought better to move on from that. We had one date. We met, chatted and walked, hugged at the end, didn't even kiss. We had agreed to keep it between us because I didn't want work drama. His response to that was to tell most of our coworkers and to write me a letter he left on my car telling me how he could see the whole picture with me marriage, kids, growing old together. But hey, I can say one good thing. One of the people he told was that guy I mentioned earlier in this post that I had a crush on. Turns out it wasn't one-sided and he made sure to step up and let me know it. I guess I shouldn't call him my crush anymore, since he's my husband now. Ghosted the creep, and good thing I did. He tried this with every other woman in the store too. /deleted, responded. I got bad vibes from a guy. On our second date I had to cancel because my dog was sick and had to go to the vet. I told him I was sorry. He asked to meet me at the vet. I told him no but we could reschedule because I was really stressed out. He showed up anyway which was really weird but I didn't think much of it even though I hadn't told him which vet it was, but I was so focused on my dog I didn't really register it beyond a fleeting thought. I didn't want him there but he was and he tried to be supportive but I was panicking and I barely knew him and it was weird. I kind of ghosted him after because of the vibes. I don't like to ghost but he sketched me out and guys like that don't always take overt rejection well. A short while later he asked to go on another date. I told him no thanks and that I wasn't interested. He said he was coming over to my house. He had picked me up for our first date. I know. I told him I had moved, which was true. He said he was coming anyway. I was like WTF. No. How? I told him he was scaring me and not to bother. A few minutes later I got a picture of my car. And my house. And my window. He had found my new house. Apparently Snapchat had a feature where it just showed people your exact location. And he was just watching my movements over town. What an awful feature from an equally awful app. I told him that was weird and scary and I slept with a knife for weeks. Fuck Snapchat. /strict thanks 7179 responded. The most memorable were sending I love you the day we became a thing, pressured me into having my first kiss with him, told me his pastor said I would be the one he married. After the breakup, I thought we could still be friends. Wrong. He liked making me feel like shit for moving on from him, took me to his junior prom and tried to kiss me after when I just wanted to get in the car to go home. Got jealous of a guy friend that came to see me graduate from high school because he was the main person I wanted to talk to, hadn't seen the kid in literal years. Every gift, favor, or what have you always felt like there was an intention to try to win me back. Nothing felt genuine, even kept trying once I went to college, the last time being when he came to see and gifted me a book for my birthday, and got pouty when I told him I was seeing someone. There's a lot more, but suffice to say, kept giving him chances because I thought he would get over me and we could be actual friends. Instead I ended up traumatized and emotionally scarred. And despite the fact that I now live across the country, I still worry that he'll somehow pop up out of nowhere or try to get back into my life somehow. U/Kaikura 89 responded. I was 16. After the police came to school to put him in a mental facility, I worked out a plan for when it would be okay to break up with him. I decided it was best to wait until he was near release so that he wouldn't be able to hurt himself immediately but to also not anger him by bolting immediately. Teenager logic sorry. After he was released, my mother found him sleeping on my balcony while I was at school. She insisted I give him a second chance. So L tried. Eventually let him go a few weeks later to make everyone happy and still get away. He continued to stalk me for over 5 years before he ended up in prison for kidnapping a different woman. Even seen regularly outside the homes of my friends for years. Never give the creep a chance. I'm still a little afraid he will just pop up one day. U/Ashhunty 13 responded. Date was okay. It was a double date with a friend mine and a friend of his. I only agreed because my friend really wanted to go out but didn't want to be alone. Things got very uncomfortable fast afterwards, wouldn't leave me alone. This was in high school, and I knew his ex-girlfriend who had a rough relationship with him and how he threatened to kill himself if she broke up with him. I was 18 when the date happened. Fast forward a few months and I moved out of state to attend school. He somehow found out I was going to a school near where he happened to be at school and kept texting me and wouldn't leave me alone, again. He then somehow found out what my school schedule was and decided to pick me up and take me to lunch between classes. After lunch, he insisted on going back to his apartment since I had lots of time to kill, where we sat in the dark watching something on TV. I sat way on the other side of the couch, but he kept getting closer and closer anyway. Luckily, nothing happened. I somehow convinced him to take me back to school, and I never spoke with him again. I had zero good vibes from him, ever. U/Kuliestone responded. I had a friend in high school. He was the kid teachers were extra nice to just in case if you know what I mean. We were messaging and he basically said he was drunk and was going to kill himself if I didn't agree to date him. I was 17 and scared so I said yes. He was alright and I had pretty low self-esteem. We dated for 2 years and they were miserable. He convinced me that I was wrong for saying I was a virgin because LD been raped as a 3-year-old, and all sorts of other shit. He had no emotional intelligence at all. He would openly flirt with my friend around me and say that if we broke up he didn't want to have to be single again so he wanted to set up other options and besides she was skinny and I wasn't. Eventually I went to college and made real friends and we just kinda ghosted each other. It was weird. The elder Agrippina responded. Creepy guy in high school asked me out and my friend said to give him a chance. They played WoW together. I had a weird feeling about him but though, hey, maybe he's just kind of socially awkward. After one insanely awkward movie night at his place he started getting really sexual. Arms around my shoulders and then grabbing my breasts really hard. I told him I wasn't interested in sleeping with a guy on the first date and he started screaming and insulting me and threw his glass at the wall. I ended up letting him fuck me just so he would calm down and not get violent. Walked home and blocked him on everything. In my friend's defense he didn't know that this guy was batshit insane and he did feel really guilty over it. I obviously don't blame him for trying to set up a date for someone who he had only had positive interactions with. U/deleted responded. Succumbed to peer pressure in high school and gave the creepy guy a 3-day chance to woo me. 3 days because my previous boyfriends both dumped me after 3 days since I didn't put out like they expected. It was petty but I was a teenager. Didn't feel any different after 3 days so I dumped him and explained why. He accepted that and we stayed friends. But about a year later we were hanging out with another friend and my ex was being a little handsy with me. I stood up to leave, so did our mutual friend, and my ex pinned me to the wall. Mutual friend, who I am not friends with anymore, left me alone with this guy who was being handsy with me and had me pinned. I had to bite him to get him off of me and he confessed to a different friend that if I hadn't gotten away he would have raped me. So yeah, 0-10 stars would not recommend. U/Beholdelum Death responded. Emotionally abused me and molested me for a year and a half in a severely toxic relationship I still am struggling to recover from. He told me if I didn't go out with him, he would kill himself. I was only 14, and he was 17 soon to be 18. He forced me into a first kiss I didn't want to give that way. He forced his hand down my pants that way. I didn't want him to kill himself because of me. He even tried to lock me in by trying to marry me while I was 16 but thank God my parents said fuck no. But then he accused me of cheating. I said I wanted to break up then because I am completely against cheating. He knew that. He knew I hated people who cheated. He told me he would kill himself if I broke up with him and hung up the phone. I told him good don't mess up. He stalked me for years up until I graduated high school. I got a gun first chance I was allowed to get licensed and he finally left me alone when he saw me carrying. He's married to some girl now and seemingly happy while I still suffer from trauma. The last message he sent me was a few months after he married. It said hope you're as happy as I am now. U/Unipine responded. I don't give out my phone number to dudes I'm not interested in. I used to, though. Guys would ask for my number and LD be completely upfront with them. I'm not interested in pursuing anything with any guys at this time, or something like that. The guys would insist they only want to be friends, it's not like that, they're not like that, etc. So LD give them the benefit of the doubt. Inevitably, after talking for a bit, they would try to push me into accepting a date or start flirting with me. And they would also inevitably get pissed off when I shot them down and pointed out I had told them this would happen from the beginning. Happened about 3 times I think before I just swore off it. I've since learned not to trust any dudes who keep insisting after the initial no for anything. They never think I really mean what I say, but I promise I do, and their attempts to convince me otherwise are just so transparently pathetic. And Skoton responding. Important survival LPT, still try to call 911, even if your phone says no signal. Federal law, in the US at least, IDK about elsewhere, requires service providers to connect you to 911, even if your phone is old, not on a plan, or says no service. If your phone turns on, dialing 911 it will connect you to the nearest available tower, period, regardless of which carrier said tower. The only instance where this might not be the case is when you're truly in the middle of nowhere, but even you never know, so never go by how many bars you have. If you're in a spot covered by even one existing provider, you will be put through. From www.911.government, all wireless phones, even those that are not subscribed to or supported by a specific carrier, can call 911. However, calls to 911 on phones without active service do not deliver the caller's location to the 911 call center, and the call center cannot call these phones back to find out the caller's location or the nature of the emergency. If disconnected, the 911 center has no way to call back the caller. Edit, related LPT for travelers. Many countries have adopted a secondary common emergency number, either 911, 999, or 112. If you're abroad and don't know that country's 911 equivalent, call any all of the above and there's a very good chance you'll be redirected to emergency services. Still, you should try to memorize the number for the country you're traveling. Don't look so surprised responded. Was going through a messy divorce, mostly because ex-husband had drained my bank account, second time, and still had all the bills of our apartment and insurance. He kept the key for months and every day for weeks I would find new things missing, although petty things. Led me to go shopping for a very non-essential item at Spencer's after work one day and happened to meet my future husband. I would say he struck me as creepy at first just because he eavesdropped on a conversation I had while checking out. Almost bought some candy, but it was a ridiculous price when I knew I could get the same thing at Target across the street for $1. Either way, unbeknownst to me he bought the candy and followed my car to the next store. Had a weird feeling of being followed, and when I turned around he was sprinting behind me with the candy I didn't want to pay for at the other store. All in all, a rare circumstance of this actually being a very kind and caring individual. We ended up talking for like 2 hours in the parking lot where it was mostly me venting about my life. Pretty much hit it off right away, talked about prospects of kids and marriage, and 5 years later we're married and have a kid together. Just wanna stress again, this is rare. If someone strikes you as creepy it's usually a sign to take seriously. I just happened to get extremely lucky and he was just an innocent, kind person that wanted his lifetime person and a family of his own as much as I did. LM Google TFY responded. First time I had him over and I fell asleep, I woke up with him getting under my bra. I played it off, sent him home, told him I wasn't interested and went a few months without talking. He messaged me again and for whatever reason I gave him another chance. We dated on and off for a couple years and it was bad. He was so clueless about how his actions affect others. He told me I couldn't get mad about things he would do. He told me oral was disgusting and I should be grateful he would give a half-assed oral job and make no attempt at getting me to orgasm despite lots of feedback, which he would get upset about being judged. He applied for a job out of state and expected I would just come with him if he got it without talking to me. He complained about money all the time and how he doesn't make enough, but he made as much of me with far lower living expenses. He cancelled trips with me so he could go on trips with his friends. After the breakup he sent me porn images and offered to have sex with me. Some of this while he knew I was dating someone. I cannot figure out why I dated him. Viola Orsino responded. Dated one for a year and a half in college. I was young and naive. Red flags before we dated included very innocuous things, like wearing intentionally mismatching shoes for attention and snapping at anyone who asked about it and just kind of being rude and unpleasant. Red flags after we dated that I somehow managed to ignore. He was into hardcore porn and zoophilia, bestiality. He was constantly rude to his mother, who was a perfectly nice woman, and once threw his phone in a fit of rage because he didn't like that she suggested he get tutoring because he was failing a class. He was really into My Little Pony, which isn't a red flag in and of itself, but the way he was into Twilight Sparkle sure was. He had serious anger issues, and was mean to our friends. I was told by them after we broke up that he was awful to them whenever I wasn't in the room, and as soon as I walked in, he immediately toned down his assholery. I ended up dumping him not without a lot of tears and anguish, because I did love him, to date someone significantly more well-adjusted. So glad I did. Kasprayed responded. Midway through the date where nothing had happened at all, we were walking from dinner to a nearby all-ages bar and he pushed me into a darkened section between buildings, not quite an alley, smashed his mouth hard against mine and grabbed my ass, both really hurt, and then said he knew I wanted him because I was always smiling at him. I tried to push him away and he shoved his tongue into my mouth, before his lips even got to mine, and gagged me. When I finally got him off me he just couldn't understand, got super angry, yelled so damn loud at me about how I'm a bitch and a tease and not worth the oxygen I breathe, and I swear I could see violence in his eyes. I saw him twice a week for the next few months, and every time my heart stopped and I gave him a wide berth. It took me a long time to stop being scared of what he might do, even after I stopped seeing him around campus. He went 0 to 600 so fast and was so intense all of a sudden I realized I didn't have any sense what he was capable of. He bruised me visibly on both ass and mouth in that 30 to 40 seconds and didn't even seem to understand that it hurt me. What would he do if he decided I deserved it? I'm thankful I don't have to know because he didn't go that far. But damn, it was scary. Especially for a naive teenager who was totally unprepared. It took about a year before I was ready to think about dating again. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. Leave your own stories down below, I would love to read them. If you would like to see more videos like this, please like and subscribe, it helps me out greatly.